The most epic fantasy trilogy ended a long time ago, but no matter how many times we review it, we do not stop experiencing the sensations that we experienced when we first watched The Lord of the Rings. After the first screening of the film, this universe had a lot of fans. Since you are watching this video, I think you also like these films as much as I do. Therefore, in this video I will show you how magic was created in the Lord of the Rings movie. For those who are on my channel for the first time, we have unspoken rules here. If you learn something new for yourself when watching the video, you like it. If not, then you can safely dislike it. A kind of motivation. Now let's get started. I would like to start with the fact that for the first time the director of the trilogy Peter Jackson read The Lord of the Rings at the age of 18, but he approached the idea of shooting this film seriously many years later, only after he had gained the necessary experience. In the mid-90s, Jackson and his wife Fran Walsh wrote a rough script and fit the works into 90 pages. Then, together with Philippa Bowens, they remade it into 240-page scripts of 2 films. And when the project was already launched in the trilogy mode, the script was rewritten again and, in general, since then, work on the text has not stopped almost until the end of filming. Interestingly, the working version of the script was very different from Tolkien's original source. The script of the 3 parts of the films certainly did not coincide with the 3 parts of the book. The authors were very free with the chronology of events in the universe. They interpreted the images as they wanted, selected episodes and replicas. For example, if the scene in the book did not move the plot in any way, then it was not used in the script. But the authors tried to convey the essence and spirit of Tolkien's novel in a very concise form. By the way, books have always been on the set as a kind of reference books for filming, but special attention should be paid to how some battle action scenes were transmitted. For example, such fragments sometimes took 20 minutes on the screen, and something like they are fighting could be written in the script. Considering that the project was quite complex and large-scale, Jackson paid special attention to the preparation and made the entire film in storyboard with pencils. However, in the future he strongly deviated from this very storyboard, because it only set the vector of the film, but was not the final solution. After the storyboard was digitized and mounted in the chronology of the development of scenes in the future film, we put on a script, which was voiced by New Zealand actors and put on trial music. And this comic was shown to the actors and the film crew in order for them to better understand the project itself and the tasks in it. The shooting of the film started in New Zealand in October 1999th year and the filming process lasted 15 months. Since the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy was being filmed at the same time, it was impossible to shoot such a large amount of material by one group. According to Jackson's calculations, it would take from 6 to 7 years, taking into account the fact that the director usually did 10 to 12 takes. Therefore, from 5 to 7 groups worked in parallel, each of which was shooting from at least 2 cameras. Also, at the same time, work was underway on the installation, because there was a lot of footage and it was added every day. And in general, the total number of the team was about 3,000 people. Now let's talk a little bit about locations, because all the filming locations were found in New Zealand, but since the group worked in 36 different places, I would like to focus on a few of the most interesting. Probably one of the most interesting locations in the movie is the Hobbit. A suitable landscape for this location was found on one of the farms near the New Zealand city of Matamata. Since this place perfectly coincided with the author's idea of the Hobbit's place of residence, before proceeding to its development, its computer and mock-up models were originally made. During the year, decorations of houses were built here, trees, gardens were planted, and paths were laid. At the stage of preparation for filming, all the shots were divided between the scenery and locations, and also decided what would be shot with the help of models, and what with the help of special effects. A large number of scenes in this film is a combination of all these approaches. For example, the episode in Hobbiton was filmed on location, but now the Baggins house inside is a pavilion. This also applies to gambling scenes. Some of them were actually filmed in the mountains, and some in the pavilion, where instead of snow there was crushed rice with salt. One of the most difficult visual solutions of the picture was to observe the sizes of various objects in the frame, since, for example, hobbits and dwarves differ significantly in proportions from other heroes. That's what most of the time was spent on during the preparation stage. The key method for creating such an illusion was relative perspective. The technique of this method is that the object, which should appear smaller in the frame, moves further away from the camera. The size of the hobbits in the picture was 75% of the size of ordinary actors. To achieve this ratio, the hobbit actors had to move away from the actors by 1/3 of the distance from the camera. For example, if there were 10 meters between the camera and an ordinary hero, then the hobbit should move away another 3/3 of a meter in the same frame. The most accurate example is Gandalf's cart. It was designed in such a way that Elijah Wood was sitting at a distance from Ian McKellen, and at a certain angle it seemed that the actors were sitting side by side and one less than the other. But the possibilities of this method are also limited, because in order for you to observe such an illusion, the camera does not have to move relative to objects. But here the team also found a very interesting solution. The objects in the background also moved imperceptibly, although you might not notice it, so that the necessary proportions were preserved on the screen. This trick was done with the help of 2 trolleys and motion control technology. And everything is very simple. The camera was moving on one cart, and the subject was moving on the other. But there was another method in which the team simply duplicated the scenery and props in different sizes. For example, the decoration of Bilbo's house was created in 2 versions, a large size so that you could see the size of the hobbits, and a small one so that the Jendal seemed large against the background. According to the same principle, we were deceived in the Prancing Pony Tavern, for which large furniture was built so that the Hobbit actors seemed much smaller in comparison with it. But that's not all. There was another method of solving the problem of relative sizes, the creation of large suits. Everything is elementary simple. The actors got up on the move, put on giant costumes and artificial hands. Thus, the hobbits seemed low next to them. But it was not without the involvement of dwarf understudies in the film. With their participation, shots were shot where the faces of the heroes were not visible. Let's now move on to creating costumes for this picture. They were created by the artist Nyla Dixon and her team, for whom a whole sewing workshop was built at the New Zealand studio Stone Street, in which 40 seamstresses were able to produce 19,000 suits in a few months of work. Such a number of costumes is due to the fact that the team made costumes in several versions, that is, for an actor, for an understudy, for a mini-understudy and for a stuntman. The Vito studio was engaged in the creation of combat suits like armor, helmets and chain mail. And by the way, despite the fact that the costumes look metallic, metal was almost not used during their creation. The materials for creating the armor were based on plastic and urethane. In addition to all this, the team has developed a method for creating a plastic chain mail. It was made from a hose of the desired diameter cut into rings. Well, a total of 12.5 million rings were cut. The development of the design for the picture began at the early stages of writing the script. In general, about 300 people worked in the art department, and since everything did not work out right away, I had to turn to the illustrations of various editions of the work. But it also helped that Tolkien described the world in great detail in his novels. In addition to the fact that this team was engaged in the creation of design, they were also engaged in the production of scenery and props, part of the characters, for example, orcs, various miniatures, plastic makeup and some effects. In total, the workers made more than 45,000 different items. There were some difficulties in terms of props. The props had to be made from scratch. There were no elementary objects in the universe of the film that could be borrowed from somewhere. So dozens of different masters were involved in creating all the subjects of the film. Glassblowers, wood carvers, jewelers and so on. The second difficulty was that almost all the items had to be made in duplicate. Bigger and smaller. And as for the rings of omnipotence, 15 of them were made at all. A separate prop is a weapon. The Vito company has manufactured more than 100 swords. Everything depended on the requirements of a certain scene. For example, they could be made of spring steel for close-up shots, aluminum for fight scenes and rubber for safety. Also, for each of the key heroes, the sword had key features that corresponded to the character of the owner. It took a whole week to make one such sword. By the way, more than 10,000 arrows were used on the set, which were also of different types. A separate piece of work was occupied by characters, orcs, trolls and other evil spirits. Since most of these creatures had a very creepy design, the actors had to wear latex prostheses and masks instead of makeup. In total, more than 10,000 masks and 1,800 latex body suits were made. Such a large number of these items were made due to the fact that face masks can be worn for only 1 day, and a suit for only 6 days. Also, one of the most important moments was the hobbits' legs. Not only did their development take more than 1 year, their peculiarity was that the legs had to be rigid, flexible and invisible on the foot. The daily process of putting on the feet took about an hour and a half, because they had to stick well to the leg, and it also took a little more time to apply paint and hair. Since Jackson wanted to avoid using special effects in the film as much as possible, preferring layouts to them, 58 miniatures of various objects were created for the picture. One of the most detailed and thoughtful miniatures was Rivendell, which was created from drawings in the ratio of 1 to 24. A miniature of Lot Lorien was also created. The authors call it the most difficult, because one of its parts was 8 8-meter trees with a diameter of 1.5 meters. The largest miniature was the sea. It was created from hard resin for a brutal look. All these miniatures are united by the detail of the study. Let's move on to visual effects. Most of them were made by the Vito Digital Studio, and in total there are more than 580 shots with graphics in the picture. The studio did all the landscape scenes, added mountain ranges, changed the sky and the like. But perhaps the most striking effects in the picture are monsters. For example, the difficulties of creating a water guardian were tentacles and splashes of water. With Balrog, the difficulty was in creating fire and smoke. The troll was originally made as a 3-meter model, and it already served as the basis for creating a 3D version. In order for him to move convincingly, the studio has developed a virtual skeleton and muscle system. The monster was revived with the help of motion cap technology, with the help of which a computer model repeated the movement of a person. In order to accurately work out the scenes with the troll, it was created virtually, and so that it could be controlled, special glasses were created, wearing which it was possible to assess the position of the monster at any time, as if he was standing in front of you. When Frodo puts on the ring, he enters the world of ghosts, which was created using the developed optical flow technique. This technique combined the image with others already captured and thus distorted it. After many trials, the authors settled on superimposing the captured fire. And the last important stage in the creation of this picture is digital color correction. It was something new at the time of the film's creation. It was all created this way. The film was digitized, the material was processed digitally and then printed again on 35mm film. 70% of the film was color corrected. Thus, the director wanted to make the landscapes and characters fabulous. For example, Hobbiton, due to its warm greenery, looks like a postcard and creates a feeling of comfort. But the sea, the gloomy world of a lost civilization, is monochromatic. In addition to all this, color correction made it possible to bring the frame to uniform visual parameters, because all the frames were not only shot from different cameras, but also at different times and under different conditions. And this is where our immersion into the fabulous world of the Lord of the Rings comes to an end. I hope the video was informative and interesting for you. Do not forget about likes and comments, it helps a lot in promoting the channel and the video itself on YouTube, and also click on the bell so as not to miss new videos, because YouTube does not always notify about the release of new videos. In addition, if the video gets a lot of likes, I will understand that you like such content and I will be happy to make another video about the Lord of the Rings universe. Thank you all for watching, friends, see you soon.